Stewart-Haas Racing is expected to sell all their charters at the end of this season, and Noah Gragson could be headed to Richard Childress Racing in 2025. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports story discusser today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. First, going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Taylor Gray's 2024 JBL audio scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Charlotte. This looks solid in my opinion, a little different than the JBL schemes we've seen in the past, but I think it does look pretty good overall. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Mark Truex Jr.'s 2024 Bass Pro Shots Patriotic scheme that we'll see this weekend at Charlotte. Looks great in my opinion, like the white, like the blue, like the red, like everything about it, it looks awesome. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Josh Williams' 2024 Alloy Patriotic scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Charlotte. Looks decent in my opinion. Colleagues had some bangers and some not so great bangers. This one's decent. Hopefully Josh Williams can have a good run in this paint scheme. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jeffrey Earhart's 2024 Forgotten Coast K9 scheme that we'll see in the Truck Series race at Charlotte. Jeffrey Earhart will make his first truck start of 2024 this weekend. This looks alright in my opinion. Glad to see Earhart back behind the wheel this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Blaney's 2024 body armor scheme that we'll see in the Coca-Cola 600. Scheme looks pretty okay in my opinion, not as good as last year's. I think they could have done a little more to this one, but Ryan Blaney hopefully could have a good run this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Lane Ray's 2024 Infinity Patriotic scheme that we'll see in the Truck Series race tonight. Looks alright in my opinion, like the colors of it. Looking forward to seeing Lane Riggs bring this car maybe to victory lane at Charlotte. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Parker Redslide's 2024 Funkaway Patriotic scheme that we'll see this weekend. This scheme's alright in my opinion. Got some good colors of the red, white, and blue, everything about it. It does look solid overall. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Dillon's 2024 Dow Ducks Unlimited scheme that we're going to see at Gateway. This scheme's in my opinion. There's some good things about it. Glad to see Dow back, but honestly, it's just It's not my favorite scheme overall, to be honest with you. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Sieg's 2024 Night Owl scheme that we'll see this weekend at Charlotte. Looks okay in my opinion. Love the pink. They did a solid job on it. Hopefully Kyle Sieg can have a good run in this car. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Will Brown's 2024 Mobile X Shaw and Partners scheme that we'll see at Sonoma. Will Brown will make his NASCAR Cup Series debut in a couple weeks at Sonoma. The schemes look solid in my opinion. Really glad to see Mobile X stepping up to the plate. And I think the scheme does look pretty good overall, to be perfectly honest with you. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Bubba Wallace's 2024 Moneyline Wow scheme that we'll see this weekend in the Coca-Cola 600. This is one of my favorite paint schemes for the weekend. Looks amazing. Love the change that Moneyline is doing. I think there's a lot of great things about it. It looks pretty solid, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Charlotte Motor Speedway. It looks absolutely phenomenal. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Charlotte purse money. So every time we have a NASCAR Cup, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series race, Bob Pockus puts out the purse money for the weekend. And according to Bob, for the Cup race, it's $9,874,821. For the Xfinity race, it's $1,383,384. And for the Truck race, it's $782,014. Truck purses, once again, very, very low. Xfinity could be a little higher considering that they're going to be going out to Portland. And for Cup, it looks pretty good. Obviously, got more teams showing up. We've got basically a full field for the weekend. Decent purse money, though, in my opinion. Not absolutely amazing, but I do think it's some pretty decent purse money overall. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Coca-Cola 600. As it was officially confirmed yesterday that the Coca-Cola 600 has officially sold out for the third year in a row. It's not just sold out in the grandstands, but the reserve seatings have been sold out, and also the infield camping, I believe, has also been sold out as well. The Coca-Cola 600 continues to grow. Obviously, a big reason being is because the racing product at Charlotte has been absolutely amazing and incredible in recent years. This is really huge for the sport. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be seeing how Kyle Larson does when he comes from Indianapolis if the race ends up happening on time. This is a really, really huge deal. Once again, congratulations to them on having a sellout this weekend. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mike Minahan. As it was announced today that Mike Minahan will be given the command for the Cup Series race at Gateway next week. Mike Minahan is a senior officer, I believe, at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. It makes a lot of sense. Obviously, they have a big association with them. Really, really huge to see you get the chance and opportunity, give the command. Hopefully, he can do a really solid and good job. I'm really happy he's getting the chance and opportunity, and hopefully Mike Minahan can do a really good job giving the command. But trust me, I think he will do the best to give a really excellent command this weekend. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ross Chastain. As it was announced earlier today that Ross Chastain will be running a late model race with Rockmore Racing in a couple weeks at the Nashville Fairgrounds. He will have Jockey as a sponsor for that event. I think it's actually coming up in the next couple weeks, and I believe Josh Berry also will be in that event. Ross Chastain's been doing some late model races recently at the National Fairgrounds, and I'm really glad to see he's going to get the chance and opportunity to go back there and race. I think he's going to have a really good chance and opportunity. Rockmore Racing's equipment has been very, very strong in the late model scene. Dawson's son has been absolutely killing it over there, and I'm glad to see that Ross Chastain's getting the chance and opportunity to drive with Rackley. They've had some work. Dawson, I think, has gotten help and some advice from Ross. I think he'll do an excellent and solid job over there with Rackley this weekend. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Huff. As it was announced earlier today that Ryan Huff will be driving a 53 for Gator Mountaineering Racing this weekend in the Truck Series at Charlotte Motor Speedway, which actually is tonight. Ryan Huff has made select starts in ARCA with the 46 organization, also has made select starts earlier this season as well. He's a young and up-and-coming talent, has done a really decent job in ARCA, got some top 10s over there, and we'll see how he ends up doing this weekend. This team does have to qualify their way in because only 36 trucks make it, and of course, with them adding this team to the list, there are 39 teams that will be showing up. We'll see if they can qualify their way in, but nonetheless, glad to see Ryan Huff will get the chance and opportunity to drive for Gator Mountain Racing at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Andrew Overstreet. As it was announced earlier today that Andrew Overstreet will be the crew chief for Sam Mayer this weekend at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Andrew Overstreet normally is the crew chief for the 88 car, but because Marty Lindley has been suspended for a race, we will see Andrew Overstreet, who's been basically being the crew chief of that 88 car, get the chance to shine. That 88's has some really good pace and speed. We'll see him also crew chief for Condor Zillich later this year. I think the Andrew Overstreet is one of the best crew chiefs in Xfinity currently at the moment. Carson Quaffel's done a really great job, and Bubba Pollard did an awesome job as well. It's a great opportunity for him. Glad to see Andrew Overstreet will get the chance and opportunity. The crew chief for Sam Mayer at Charlotte Motor Speedway, I think will do a very good job. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Team Hendrick. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday, the Hendrick Motorsports has quietly been shooting a documentary around Kyle Larson's bid to run the double this weekend. I believe there's a group that's working with them. I think Amazon also could be involved. I'm not entirely sure at this point, but it is unclear and unknown when this documentary is going to be officially released. Not surprised or shocked, apparently it's been in the works since October last year, and obviously with how big of a deal this is, Kyle Larson is attempting the double. The weather could affect it. This could basically be, and I would not be surprised or shocked if this ends up going on Netflix later this year. This is a really, really huge story overall, and to see that Hendrick Motorsports is developing this is really huge. A lot of people get to see it. We see NASCAR continue to grow over recent years and recent seasons, and I think this is going to continue helping that narrative of continuing to grow. Really exciting stuff, and very happy to see that they're developing this. I think this is going to be a huge win. I hope Amazon picks it up or Netflix, because if it goes on Amazon or Netflix, I think it make a lot of sense. We'll see what ends up happening. Nonetheless, glad to see that Hendrick Motorsports is working on a documentary. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Nathan Byrd. As it was announced yesterday that Nathan Byrd will be driving the 92 for DGM Racing and will make his Xfinity Series debut at Portland next weekend. Nathan Byrd is the son of Jonathan Byrd, who has attempted to run the Indy 500 with drivers like James Davison, and Nathan Byrd has been competing in the USAC Silver Crown Series, to my understanding, and a couple other series as well. He's got a lot of road course experience. I think he's also made some Trans Am starts, to my understanding. So this is going to be a very fun opportunity for Nathan Byrd. We've seen DGM show some good pace and speed. Obviously, Josh Plickey's on the seat because he's driving the 19 car next weekend. I think Nathan's going to have a really strong chance and a good opportunity to be competitive. Glad to see he'll be driving for this team at Portland next weekend. Great opportunity for him. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brad Perez. As it was announced yesterday that Brad Perez will be driving to 14 for SS Greenlight Racing in a couple weekends at Sonoma Raceway. Brad Perez has been working in a lot of organizations and teams over the years and also has made some select Xfinity Series starts for organizations I believe like SS Greenlight Racing, I think DGM Racing at one point as well, and even was a relief driver at one point for Alpha Prime Racing in substitution I believe for Leland Honeyman Jr. Brad Perez is one of the hardest working drivers in the industry, and I think he's going to do an excellent and a very, very good job with this organization, especially if they get some support. I think Brad Perez has a really good chance to get a top 20, though I will say the Xfinity Series field for next weekend is extremely competitive. We'll see how he ends up doing, but not next week, Sonoma, I should say. I think Brad Perez could potentially have a good chance and opportunity to get at least a top 20 with SS Greenlight in a couple weekends at Sonoma. I think he's going to do a very good job. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about BJ McLeod. As it was announced earlier today that BJ McLeod will be driving to 66 for MBM Motorsports in this year's Coca-Cola 600. Originally, David Starr was going to be the driver, and originally this team was not on the entry list for this weekend, but they've changed it, and they've brought BJ McLeod in. BJ, one of the more veteran drivers in motorsports, has done a really solid job in select cup races we've seen him run, though he's had some issues on the track with tires going down. But if you're going to get somebody that isn't David Starr to get behind the wheel, BJ is the perfect guy. I think he's driven for MBM in the past in the lower series, so I'm really excited to see if BJ is going to get the chance and opportunity to race. I think he's going to make the best of it, and once again, great opportunity. I'm really looking forward to see what he can do. I don't think they're going to have the pace and speed to contend, but I do think he could have a very solid and good run this weekend if the attrition rate does come into play. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Chicago Street Course. As it was officially announced yesterday that the Chicago Street Course has won the 2024 SBJ Award for the biggest sport event of the year. This is definitely a little bit of shock, but also not a massive shock when you consider how big the Chicago Street Course was. Considering it was almost a disaster at one point with the weather issues that came in last year, it became a very big success in the ratings department, and also because of the fact that Shane Van Gisbergen won in his Cup Series debut. The last time prior to that happened was when Johnny Rutherford won back, I believe, in 1963 or 1964. I think this is a really, really huge deal for the Chicago Street Course to continue to grow. Obviously, it's unclear what's going to happen past next year if this event is going to continue, but massive and huge congratulations to Chicago Street Course on getting it done and winning the SBJ Award for the biggest event of the year. It's a really huge and massive deal. Congratulations to them on winning the SBJ Award. It's really well deserved, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ross Chastain once again. As it was announced earlier today that Ross Chastain will be driving the 92 for DGM Racing in a couple weeks at Iowa Speedway. Ross Chastain has 5 races scheduled with DGM this season. Originally, I believe he had a couple races at Darlington, if I'm not mistaken, that was on his schedule, or Dover, I remember correctly. But because of the fact that that was at the time the Xfinity Dash or Cash events, he was not eligible to run. Cup drivers are allowed to run at Iowa Speedway. There's no restrictions because we've seen a lot of Cup guys running the Xfinity Series in the past of the track when they ran at that track. I think Ross is going to have a solid performance. DGM's has some decent pace and speed around that top 10 to top 15 area at times. And Ross Chastain is someone who can get the best equipment, plus he's driven for them in the past. We'll see how he ends up doing, and we'll see if Ross Chastain can have a very solid and good performance with them at Iowa Speedway in a few weekends. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story in today's episode as we're talking about Sage Karam. As it was announced yesterday that Sage Karam will be driving 26 for Sam Hunt Racing next week at Portland Raceway. Sage Karam has already made a start, I believe, at Sam Hunt Racing earlier this year where he actually had a top 10 performance going, and I think he had some issues in on-track confrontations with Parker Clearman, and there was a confrontation on pit road as well. Sage Karam is a very elite road course racer, and I go back to last year, Road America, where Sage Karam had a very strong chance and a really great opportunity to go to victory lane. Was in position to win, had probably his best race he ever had, probably had one of the best races Sam Hunt Racing has ever had. I think that Sage Karam is going to have a really solid chance and opportunity. It is going to be a very stacked Xfinity Series field, seeing Josh Wielicki, Shane Van Gisbergen, who's going to be spotting for Will Brown, by the way, at Sonoma, AJ Allmendinger and Sage Karam all going for the win. I think it's going to be a very fun Xfinity Series race at Portland, and Sage Karam, I think, is going to do an excellent and really good job with them at Portland in a week or so. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ty Gibbs. As it was announced yesterday that Ty Gibbs will be driving the 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing at Sonoma Raceway. Ty Gibbs already made a select start or two so far in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, but I believe has not won so far in Xfinity this season. We're going to talk about him a little bit with the other scheduled start he has coming up this week, but he's getting a little more experience in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And remember, he doesn't have the restrictions yet because he has not ran 3 full-time years in Cup, and this is obviously a second full-time year in the NASCAR Cup Series. If I were a betting man, I would put a lot of money on Ty Gibbs going into this race because I think Ty Gibbs is going to have a really solid chance and opportunity to go to victory lane with JGR. The road course program has been pretty decent, and Ty Gibbs was a major threat and contender early in the race to win at Circuit of the Americas. So I think Ty Gibbs is going to have a very good chance and opportunity. I think he will be a threat for the win at Sonoma in a couple of weeks. We'll see what he does, but I think Ty Gibbs will be a major threat and contender. I think he'll have a great chance and opportunity to win at Sonoma with JGR in a couple weekends in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dirty Mo Media. As it was announced earlier today that Dirty Mo Media has officially signed a deal with Sirius XM, and they now will have their shows played in exclusive advertising sales on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. On top of that as well, I believe that Dale Jr. Dallin is going to start playing on SiriusXM starting in early June when Fox's deal ends up coming to an end. So this is going to start taking place in the next few weeks. This is absolutely a huge deal and a massive signing and makes Dirty Mo Media really legit. They have a lot of really awesome podcasts. Obviously, the Dale Jr. Download, Dale Jr. Reloaded. They've also got Door Bumper Clear, which has been very controversial. The Teardown, the Money Podcast that Steve Letarte does. They've also got some other big podcasts that are working on right now. And they've also got some IndyCar podcasts. They have Garage Guy Chase and Connor Daly doing a really strong IndyCar podcast. And I would have to imagine that some of those podcasts are going to be going on SiriusXM in the not-so-distant future. To me, this is a really, really huge deal and a massive congratulations to Dirty Mo Media on picking up this really huge deal for the network as a whole. Again, I don't know the exact deals on everything they're going to be doing here, but to me, this is really, really huge. And once again, congratulations to Dirty Mo Media on being picked up by SiriusXM as they continue to grow their branding. I wonder if we'll see Dale Jr. on there a lot more frequently. Nonetheless, I'm really happy and glad to see that SiriusXM has picked up the rights and will be working with Dirty Mo Media going forward. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ty Gibbs. As it was announced earlier today and confirmed earlier today that Ty Gibbs will be driving the 20 for Joe Gibbs Racing at Charlotte tomorrow afternoon. Originally, Eric Almirola was a driver that was set to drive the 20 car, but unfortunately, they have made the decision, an executive decision, to go ahead and change the drivers for this weekend. I think a big reason behind that is because I think they trust Ty Gibbs a little bit more. And Ty Gibbs, of course, is won here in the Xfinity Series. He won here back in 2021. And every year since he started driving at this racetrack, including at ARCA as well, he has been very, very competitive. And the 20 car has been extremely fast so far this year. You look at the races that 20 car has ran. We've seen that car go to victory in the Eric Almirola earlier this season at Martinsville. We have seen John Hungerman get a win or two, and that car has been consistently up front with drivers like Eric Almirola, and I do believe that Ty Gibbs will have a really good chance and opportunity. He's not only picked to win the Xfinity Series race. I've got Kyle Busch getting that win, but he's going to be joining a very stacked field of drivers like Chase Elliott and Noah Gragson, even drivers like Haley Deegan and Shane Van Gisbergen and Matt DiBenedetto and Justin Allgaier and Cole Custer are going to be in that event. I think that Ty Gibbs has a really great chance and opportunity to get it done, and I seriously think he'll be a serious threat and contender to go to victory lane. I watch out for Ty Gibbs because I think he'll have a really great chance and a massive opportunity to go to win. I think he will be a threat for the win this weekend, and I think he'll have a good chance to win the Xfinity Series race this weekend at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mario Andretti and Andretti F1, also known as Andretti Global. Now, if you've been paying attention over the course of the last few months, you've been seeing a really big fiasco and saga around Andretti Global. Originally, Liberty Media and the people at the FIA and FOM, well, really FOM, denied Andretti of getting in. Well, now you've got Congress that's been getting involved with the Andretti situation, and they're really trying to get Andretti into F1. Well, according to what Mario Andretti told the media, he says that Greg Moffitt told him that he will do everything in his power to not let Andretti in Formula One. This, in my opinion, is really, really absurd. Consider the fact that Liberty Media is American. Andretti Global is a full American organization who is going to bring a lot to the table going forward. I just don't understand why someone like Greg Moffitt, who has been wanting American dollars, who wants to expand the program, who's got the richest company in the world when it comes to stock market, among other things, you're telling me that Andretti is not going to bring any value to Formula One. The only reason that they don't want to prove them from going to Formula One is because they want less competition in that dilution funds, which with the upcoming Concord agreement, which goes into effect in the next year or so, they're trying to increase that to $600 million for the next deal. And they're trying everything desperately to not let them in. Yet, the ratings have continued going down for Formula One. Yes, I know they had their biggest TV rating ever in U.S. history, but if I'm looking at Formula One, and I'm looking at this from Mario Andretti's perspective, a team like Andretti is going to bring more value than a team like Haas. A lot of people think that Haas should be sold altogether, and they're going to bring more than a team like Visa Cash App Red Bulls or Racing Bulls or what Alfa Romeo is currently at the moment. I understand completely why a lot of people are upset about the situation, and Mario Andretti is the biggest name. And the fact that they're trying to deny this from happening, to me, is just completely unacceptable. So I get Mario Andretti's frustration, because to me, this whole thing is just unacceptable, and I think they bring more value than most of the organizations currently in Formula One at this particular moment. But that is my opinion. I think they need to prove them. Otherwise, this is a big, bad move on their part. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brett Moffitt. As it was announced on Wednesday that Brett Moffitt will be driving the 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing in a couple weeks at Iowa Speedway. Brett Moffitt has made select starts in the Truck Series so far this year, drove for Tricon Garage at Kansas Speedway a couple weekends ago, where he finished 5th with not a lot of practice, which is really impressive. He's also running the Truck Series race later tonight, which you'll see later tonight. We'll likely do a review on that, but he'll be driving the one truck this weekend, where I think he's got a really great chance and opportunity to go to victory. This will be the first time that Brett Moffitt is, of course, racing the Xfinity Series this year. Remember, last year he drove the 25-car full-time for AM Racing, was replaced by Haley Deegan going into the season. I think Brett Moffitt has a really strong chance and opportunity to go to victory lane. I've already talked about this with Ty Gibbs, but the Joe Gibbs Racing cars have been really fast, not just on the shorter oval tracks, but they've been really strong on pretty much every type of track so far this year. And Brett Moffitt is a driver that gets the best out of equipment. And this also is a home race for him because Brett Moffitt is from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, I believe. So this is a home race for him, and I think he's got a really great chance and opportunity to get it done when we go to Iowa in a couple of weeks. He's got a lot of experience, ran some Xfinity Series and truck race here. I think he won a Truck Series race here a few years ago, if I remember correctly. So he's got the experience at this track. I think he's going to have a really great chance and opportunity. And if he does well enough, this could lead to him potentially running full-time in the future. That might be an exaggeration, but I think that he's got a good chance if he does well enough to go full-time. We'll see what Brett Moffitt can do. A great opportunity for him, and I'm looking forward to seeing him get the chance and opportunity to work with the team at Iowa Speedway. I think he'll be very, very competitive. I think he'll be very, very fast. And like I said, I think he'll have a great chance and opportunity to get the victory at Iowa Speedway in a couple of weeks. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Airspeed. As Airspeed has officially opened to the public. Adam Stern and many reporters in the industry were spotted Airspeed in their opening, and there's a lot of photos that have surfaced from the opening of Airspeed. Denny Hamlin stated to the media that he spent a lot more money than he initially stated. I think he spent double on what he originally wanted to spend on getting Airspeed up. This is the new shop that 2311 Racing has. We know 2311 Racing is interested in expanding to a 4-car program, and you take a look at the shop as well. There's so much initiation. You can go and buy Jordan shoes, if I remember correctly, from some of the photos I've seen. They've got really cool banners. They've got Michael Jordan. They've got Denny Hamlin banners. And they, of course, also have a Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick banner as well. If I ever get out to Charlotte, this is a shop that I really want to go check out. And this is one of the more innovative shops that we've seen. It's kind of looking like a Formula One shop, one that a team like McLaren owns. And Denny Hamlin's had this vision to modernize facilities and modernize NASCAR as a whole. Not just with the charter agreement, but with his own shop and organization as well. And what they've done and what they have here is phenomenal and incredible. I believe the 45 and 23 are on display. When you go inside the 23 McDonald's car, I think the Monster Energy 45 is also there. And they've got memorabilia in the short time. You think about everything that 2311 Racing has accomplished in a short time. They've got a shop now. They've won like 5 or 6 cup races. 3 or 4 with Tyler Reddick, 2 with Bubba Wallace, and 1 with Kurt Busch. This is a team that is continuing to build bridges and build things going forward. And I think this is an organization that if they continue doing the things, because Denny Hamlin has a 5-year plan, this is a team that wants to win a championship next year. And with everything that they've accomplished and with everything that they're doing currently at the moment, I think they've got a really great chance and opportunity to accomplish everything that they want to get done. So this is a really, really great looking shop in my opinion, and maybe in the future they could expand. I imagine they've got some more stuff that's up their tricks and up their sleeve, but I'm really excited about this shop. Again, it just looks phenomenal and incredible from the photos and the images. This is a shop that I really want to get to. It looks amazing. It looks phenomenal, and I'm glad to see that Airspeed is officially up and running. This is really exciting for the community and really exciting for everyone as a whole, especially everything that Denny Hamlin's put into this. This looks phenomenal, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Frankie Muniz. As it was announced earlier this evening that Frankie Muniz is back in the NASCAR Xfinity Series as he'll be driving a 35 for Joey Gase Motorsports next weekend at Portland International Raceway. This will be Frankie Muniz's first NASCAR Xfinity Series road course start. He's made 2 starts, I believe, so far in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He ran at Daytona, but unfortunately crashed out in one of the first early wrecks. And then he ran at Phoenix, where unfortunately he finished many laps down, but was able to make the show. There was a lot of rumors earlier this year that Frankie Muniz was looking to buy an ownership stake in Joey Gase Motorsports and had a lot of more races scheduled, but hasn't really ran since. He did run with Brett Jones Racing at Talladega a few weekends ago, where I believe finished outside the top 10, but was running in the top 5 through the first half of the event before the pit stops ended up taking place. I think Frankie Muniz, while I don't expect him to be a major threat and contender for the victory, he is going to be running a road course. And to be fair, Frankie Muniz has had a lot of experience on road courses. So I think he could be someone that could be an underdog to watch out for. I'm not expecting Frankie Muniz to go out there and win the race by any stretch of imagination because Joey Gase Motorsports hasn't had the pace or speed in recent years to get it done. In fact, they've really never had the speed ever. But I think if there's anybody that really can step up to the plate and run extremely good, it is Frankie. He's been solid in ARCA. He got a couple top 10s there. Of course, got a top 5. And I think that Frankie could be someone to watch for to maybe have a solid performance, maybe like a top 30 performance potentially, because this Xfinity field is extremely stacked. Drivers like Haley Deegan, Josh Felicki, Shane Van Gisbergen, AJ Allmendinger, you name it, Sage Karam as well, Parker Clearman, Sheldon Creed, you name it, are all going to be competing in this race. And I think it's just so exciting to add a cherry on top to have a driver like Frankie Muniz, and of course Matt DiBenedetto as well. I'm very excited for Frankie. I think he's going to do overall a very excellent job, and looking forward to see him on the racetrack at Portland in a couple of weeks. Next week, I should say. I think he'll have a very strong chance and opportunity to get the victory at Portland next weekend. We'll see how he ends up doing. I don't think he's going to have a chance to win, but I think he'll have at least a decent performance, hopefully with some good speed. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Carl Edwards. Now, it was announced earlier this week that Carl Edwards is one of the 3 main people that has been inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Ricky Rudd is also on the modern-day ballot, and he will be on a lot of races going forward. And Ralph Mooney got inducted into the Pioneer ballot. But a lot of people are talking about Carl Edwards and whether or not he should have gotten into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. If you look at his numbers, Carl Edwards had 28 NASCAR Cup Series victories, 1 Xfinity Series championship, finished in the top 5 in points 6 out of the 12 or 13 years he ran. Actually, 6 of the top 13 years he ran full-time in the Cup Series and got 28 wins in a very short period of time. And like I mentioned, won the Busch Series championship. Bob Barker's put out a tweet about kids that you probably didn't know or drivers you didn't know for the younger fans, and basically talked about Carl Edwards. And Carl Edwards has stated recently in recent months that he's not interested in making a return. The reason he has stated that is because he needs to be fully committed to coming back to the sport. And Carl Edwards has stated that right now he needs to do full commitment, and he doesn't expect to be very competitive if he makes a return. A lot of fans like myself would really love to see Carl Edwards come back just for a one-off return in the future, and here's why. I think it would provide a lot of closure for a lot of fans like myself. I grew up being a massive Carl Edwards fan, and when he announced in early 2017 around my birthday that he was going to be retiring, I was absolutely devastated as a fan because I wanted to see Carl Edwards come back in 2017 because he almost won that championship in 2016, and he's always been teasing us that he was looking to return. And he's been getting at the racetrack a lot more, and I do believe that he's going to be at the racetrack a lot more going forward with him being in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And he's probably going to get this question a lot going forward. And trust me, like I said, I would absolutely love to see Carl Edwards come back and race in the sport once again. Will he do it? I'm really not sure at this point. But I just hope and pray that Carl Edwards makes a decision to come back in and race in the sport at least one more time. It's a shame it's probably not going to happen at this point considering he needs to be fully committed. And right now he's got a lot of commitments with his family. He's probably out somewhere in a ranch farming currently at the moment. He did get on Sirius XM NASCAR radio. He said he was flying at the time when he got called, I think, by Randy Fuller. I'd love to see Carl Edwards come back and drive for a team like RFK in 2011. Denny actually tried to convince Carl to come back and race one point, and Carl was basically simulator working for the team. So we'll see if that ever ends up happening, but I don't know if Carl Edwards is ever going to come back. It probably won't happen, unfortunately. I'd love to see Carl Edwards make a return because for me, it would provide a lot of closure for me as a fan, but it sadly looks like the Carl Edwards is not interested in making a return, which is unfortunate, but it doesn't shock me or surprise me overall. I'm not completely surprised to see that Carl Edwards really would need to be more committed, and right now Carl Edwards is more committed to spending time with his family than being committed on the racetrack, which I can't blame him for, to be honest, because if you had done as much as he's done for the sport and they kind of gave up on you, I wouldn't blame you for not wanting to come back, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Kyle Busch. Now, it was announced on Wednesday morning that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. received a $75,000 fine for the fight that took place with him and Kyle Busch. During the NASCAR Cup Series race in Norfolk, so for the All-Star race, Kyle Busch intentionally wrecked Stenhouse after Stenhouse, it looked like, put him in the outside wall, but after the replay showed, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. never got into Kyle Busch, and Kyle Busch overreacted in that situation and retaliated. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. said that, told the media members, wait after the race, and then they confronted him after the event, and there were punches and shoves thrown. A picker member was suspended for 8 races. I think one of the techs from his team was suspended, and also another member, I think Danny Myrick, was suspended for 4 races. And Ricky Stenhouse Sr. was also indefinitely suspended by NASCAR and had his hard car pulled, which isn't a major shock and surprise. Now, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has been speaking to media members in recent days, and he says he hasn't decided if he will appeal the $75,000 fine. He says he's a little surprised how big the fine was. He said he expected that there was at least some penalties that were going to be coming down the road, but he's a little surprised that the penalty he received was as excessive as it was received. Now, he also stated that he spoke to Richard Childress and called Richard Childress and said to squash the beef. We talked about this also on the channel, but Richard Childress actually said to Chris Weaver during a charity event, he told Chris Weaver that if Ricky was to wreck Kyle Busch's car, the 8 car, he said he'd be ready to fight him. Even though Richard Childress is around 80 years old at this point, I actually do believe Richard that he would do this because Richard Childress is someone that I would not want to mess with. So I'm glad to see that they basically called each other and Richard told them basically just don't wreck your cars and nothing bad is going to end up taking place. Now, Kyle Busch was on the Kenny Walsh show with Charlie Marlowe yesterday, and he actually stated his side of the story. I think he said he thought he had contact with Ricky, but Kyle was starting to agree, and then they had a confrontation, and then Kyle Busch said he was over there to kind of squash this beef and talk about what happened, and he said that he did not know that any of this was going to go down, even though his picker had told him that someone was going to be waiting at the hauler, and he basically told Charlie Marlowe that he said that he got ambushed by Ricky Stenhouse Jr., but he also missed he intentionally wrecked him, which could result in a penalty going forward, because we've seen drivers admit to wrecks in situations, and they've gotten penalized. Look at Denny Hamlin last year and what happened to the penalty he ended up receiving. To me, when I look at this situation overall, I believe when it comes to the fight, I think $75,000 is a little excessive. I understand the NASCAR's rules they have to hand down, and also there's going to be a double standard because the NASCAR media group is not the same as basically the group that hands the penalties out. We do have to remember that, and I should clarify that from my own video. But my personal opinion is this. I think Ricky Stenhouse Jr. got the short end of the stick in this situation. Now, I'm guessing the reason that he got a penalty is because of the fact that he admitted that he was going to go after Kyle Busch. And he did go after Kyle Busch after saying it, which, again, NASCAR is not a big fan of. And NASCAR has been pretty consistent with their calls. And a lot of you are probably going to mention what happened to Austin O'Maya Snyder. It was because it was on pit road. Same what happened with like Kyle Busch and Joey Logano years ago. That was on pit road. Same with Denny Hamlin and Joey Logano. That was on pit road at Martinsville. So you think about this, I guess NASCAR is being consistent because he basically delivered and was very deliberate with what he was going to end up doing. To me, when I look at this situation as a whole, I just think the Stenhouse might appeal it. They haven't made a decision yet. I think they have until tomorrow or Saturday to decide if they're going to appeal it or not. If they appeal it, they might not win, unfortunately, which I think they should have a case of winning because I've seen some drivers defending what Stenhouse did because I think that Stenhouse basically backed up what he said, and he has some drivers like Daniel Suarez, Ali Sauer, Hermie Sauer, who are former drivers who are basically defending Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in this situation. To me, I think that the penalty was a little overkill on the fine. I'm glad no points were handed out, but I really am a little surprised that Kyle Busch, for intentionally wrecking Stenhouse, didn't at least get some sort of penalty. But I've seen people comparing this to what Chastain and Denny Hamlin did. I don't know why people are comparing that. That's not the same thing. But I think the fact that Kyle admitted it could result in a penalty, but I don't think it's going to result in any sort of penalties. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be shocked, surprised if nothing comes from it going forward. I don't expect any penalties from Kyle Busch. But personally, I think Kyle Busch should at least get some sort of penalty for at least saying that he did wreck Ricky Stenhouse Jr. But let's be real and honest, he's probably not getting a penalty, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, Kyle Larson is attempting to run the double this weekend. He'll be running the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 on the same day. He qualified 5th for the Indy 500. However, that could be in jeopardy this year. If you've been paying attention to the weather for this weekend's Indy 500, there is a really great chance and possibility that the Indy 500 could either get delayed or get postponed to Monday or even Tuesday. Now, I will say the weather has been improving over the course of the last 24 hours. However, the chances are still very high, and right now there's a 90% chance of thunderstorms. If the Indy 500 ends up starting on Sunday, they would have to potentially change the driver if there's any delays. Kyle Larson has to start the race on Sunday if he wants to complete it on Sunday to complete the double. Looking at the Coke 600 weather at Charlotte, it does look really, really promising, though it has been changing over the course of the last few weeks. Let's talk about the outside possibilities. If the Indy 500 does have a chance of getting in on Sunday, Kyle Larson would need a replacement driver. Tony Kanaan, from my understanding, it sounds like may have to do a refresher test in order to have a chance and opportunity, or Nolan Siegel would be the only other driver that would be eligible to take over, considering that Nolan Siegel was the only driver bumped from this year's Indianapolis 500. And apparently Devlin D. Francesco, Benjamin Peterson, according to David Lane, what he said on the NASCAR Weekly podcast last night, they're also eligible to do, because they have ran last year, they'd be eligible to substitute for Kyle Larson. But Nolan Siegel, considering that he has a little bit of experience with Zach Brown, of course, the owner of Arrow McLaren, it would make a lot of sense for him to go in. If you're a Kyle Larson fan like myself, you do want him to see him complete the double. But one thing that needs to be noted is that Kyle Larson does have, from my understanding, another year on his contract to run the Indy 500. So if he doesn't get to complete the double this year, he's got a chance to do it again next year. There are some drivers like Kyle Busch who are interested in maybe taking that seat for next season. The hope is that you want the race to run out, to basically rain out on Sunday if you want Larson to complete it. Because if they can get halfway through the Coke 600 on Sunday, if the Indy 500 rains out, then Kyle Larson will not have any issues of getting the race in and basically completing the double like he wants to. But it could be the opposite way of the double. And again, like I mentioned, he does have 2025 as an option as well. They're weighing their options. Rick Hendrick, if he's in contention for the win, he's not going to pull Kyle Larson from the Indy 500. But if he's not in contention to win and there's still going to be half the race to go, then we could have some issues. The Indy 500 has taken about 3.5 hours normally, and there's been a lot of red flags the last couple of years. They need to get lap 101 for the race to be official. Once they get to that point, then if Kyle Larson is in the lead and he wins it, then it would be really, really huge. I want to see Kyle Larson win the Indy 500, and let me say this. He has got a really great chance and opportunity to win the Indy 500 this year. He's looked really stout in the practice sessions, and I think Kyle Larson will be a major threat and serious contender to get it done. But like I said, right now, either be Tony Kanaan substituting for him, which is the Rain Man, or it'll be Nolan Siegel. I believe we're going to see probably Kyle Larson complete it, though. I think that needs to be the main priority. I get that the Coke 600 and getting a lot of those stage points is a pretty big priority for sure because you want to get the playoff points, and that's where he seriously competes in. But if you've got a chance to win the Indy 500, you absolutely and seriously need to take it. So I really hope Hendrick Motorsports makes the right decision. It's going to be a tough decision for sure because, like I said, they do have next year. So if it was this was year number 2 of that contract, then they probably would easily pull him. But I don't think it's going to be an easy decision this year. If Kyle Larson's got a shot to get it done, I certainly think he's going to want to do it. So I think Larson's going to try to run the Indy 500 if weather's in the area. We'll see what ends up happening, but we'll see if the weather becomes a major issue and problem. But I don't think it'll be a massive problem this time around. Well, it could be a problem, but I think Larson will be able to complete the double this time around with a chance to go to victory lane. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR silly season. Now, Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic wrote up a very good article surrounding all the situations that are going on with NASCAR silly season. And there's a lot of very interesting points from his article that we are going to discuss here. First, according to Jordan Bianchi, Stewart-Haas Racing is expected to sell all 4 of their charters. We had heard they might sell 1. We've heard they might sell 2 earlier in the year. But Stewart-Haas Racing is expected to sell all 4 charters according to Jordan Bianchi. This is not a shock or surprise. We also got reports earlier this past week from Adam Stewart that more than likely they will be potentially selling everything at the end of the year. It's not just all the charters that might be gone at the end of the season, but it also could be the buildings. And Farmer Motorsports is in the running. Speaking of which, Farmer Motorsports, they're looking to expand going into the 2025 season. They're looking to be at least a 3-car organization, but they also could be a 4-car organization in 2025. But we'll get to where that could be a problem here in just a little bit. Farmero is now a Tier 1 organization in the Florida camp, and they want to expand and become a bigger organization next season. And I think if they want to get bigger support and be more competitive, they would be looking to expand going into the next season. Now, also according to Jordan Bianchi, there are 4 other organizations that are in the running for Stewart-Haas charters. First one is Trackhouse Racing. They're looking to expand to a 3 or 4-car organization going into next year, considering Daniel Suarez and Ross Chastain are both currently under contract, though Suarez is in a contract year currently at the moment. 2311 Racing. They want to be a 3-car team in 2025. Now, Denny Hamlin has stated publicly that they're not really interested in expanding their organization, but I disagree with that. I think that you're going to see 2311 Racing be one of the organizations that expands. Corey Heim, who is a reserve driver for 2311, could be in the running for one of those seats. Sheldon Creek could also be in the running. Hell, at this point, if Kurt Busch wants to come back, he could be in the running for a seat as well. And you've got other drivers like Eric Almirola, who we'll get into in just a little bit, who also could be in the running for a 2311 Racing seat as well. Legacy is also in the running for a charter. They want to expand going into next year. They've talked about potentially expanding. They've died down a little bit, but I do believe that they're in the running to get a charter for next year. Got reported about a month and a half ago they're one of the teams interested in a Stewart-Haas Racing charters. And the new one that's shown up is not RFK Racing. It's Richard Childress Racing. RCR, they're looking to expand going into the 2025 season as well. They want to be a 3-car team, especially with the Austin Dillon rumblings and all that stuff, and with Austin Hill wanting to move up next year. Same with Jesse Love. I think RCR could be a team that gets a charter. Now, those are the teams that are interested in the charters. What about the drivers currently driving for Stewart-Haas Racing? Well, according to Jordan Bianchi, Chase Briscoe is a lead candidate to take over the 21 car for the Wood brothers at the end of this year. Harrison Byrd has been struggling immensely with the Wood brothers in 2024, and he stated at the Daytona 500 this year that this is a make-or-break season for him. I've heard for months on end, really for the last month or so, since about the Texas weekend, that Harrison Byrd is basically out of the Wood brothers at the end of this year. I heard they were looking to maybe pull him early in the year, but I do expect that Harrison Byrd is going to finish this season. That is a fourth Penske car. And while the 21 has struggled the last few years, Matt Benedetto and Ryan Blaney were playoff contenders in that 21 car. So I think that could be a possibility. If RFK expands, I could see him using stage 60 for him. I could also see drivers like Haley Deegan being in running and Riley Herbst and Cole Custer. But I think Chase Briscoe ends up going there. Going back to some other SHR drivers, according to Bianchi, Cole Custer and Riley Herbst are in the running for the front row motorsports seats. Cole Custer's name for the last month, I have heard, has been linked to the 34 car. We know Michael McDowell is going over to Spire next year to drive the 71 car. They need a replacement driver. Cole Custer brings a little bit of sponsorship and funding, and if he's no longer going to be at SHR, the 34 would make a ton of sense. Riley Herbst also is another name that is linked there. Riley brings a lot of sponsorship funding to the table with Monster Energy and a Terribles group. Obviously, his family owns a Terribles chain. I definitely think he's in the running for that seat as well. Now let's go over to Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez is in the running to save with Trackhouse next year. Ross Chastain is currently under contract. Daniel Suarez, and it's stated by Jordan Bianchi in this article, that Daniel Suarez is very, very close to signing an extension with Trackhouse for a year or two. The contract goes through this year. The win in Atlanta really played a role in that. He's got sponsorship working with him, and he'll stay at Trackhouse more than likely going into 2025. Now, according to Jordan Bianchi as well, it does sound like the NASCAR is very interested in limiting the amount of teams that teams can own in the sport. It sounds like that they're going to be potentially dropping it in the new charter proposal from 4 teams down to 3 teams. Now, he mentions that Joe Gibbs Racing, Hendrick Motorsports, will be grandfathered into this new rule, meaning that Hendrick Motorsports and JGR, at least for the time being, would not be affected. But let's say a team like Trackhouse Racing wants to go ahead and expand next season. They've got a dilemma now if they make this a rule. I personally would not be a fan of them limiting it. I get where they're coming from here because they want more teams to expand and show up. And we've been seeing a lot of these teams expanding to 3 or 4 car organizations and want teams like a Junior Motorsports perhaps getting the chance and the opportunity to expand. But at the same token, same time, I think it would be a very bad look for the sport if they dropped it again from 4 cars to 3 cars. Speaking of going back to Trackhouse Racing, they have a dilemma between Zane Smith and Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, if this new charter rule does not come into effect, they, I don't think, have an issue with getting 2 charters for Zane and SVG. Zane Smith more than likely will be there. There's a lot of rumblings and chatter that they've already taken the 16 charter from Kaulig Racing with the association that Kaulig and Trackhouse have. They are probably taking the charter for Zane there. What happens with Shane Van Gisbergen? Shane Van Gisbergen has stated publicly that he wants to be a full-time Cup driver in the 2025 season. And I think he's done solid so far in Xfinity. He's currently 15th in the points, 27 points back. And remember, he's making his intermediate debut this weekend. I think Shane Van Gisbergen will be a very solid driver to pick up for a full-time start in 2025. Now let's move on back to the Chevy and Ford camp. We've already talked about the fact that Chase Briscoe is probably going to the Wood Brothers. What about Noah Gragson? Well, according to Jordan Bianchi, it does sound like the Noah Gragson's in the running to go over to Richard Childress Racing. If RCR does expand to a 3-car program in 2025, Kyle Busch will stay in the 8-car next year. Noah Gragson will go to a 3rd car, 29, and Austin Dillon will stay there. According to Bianchi, there was a lot of chatter that Austin Dillon may retire at the end of the season. That has been denied now because Austin Dillon has signed a multi-year contract extension with Richard Childress Racing. Of course, being the son of the grandson makes a lot of sense. I do believe that Austin Dillon will probably stay the next couple years. I think Noah Gragson is going to RCR next year. A lot of chatter behind the scenes. He's being looked at by teams like Trackhouse as well. But if RCR expands, Noah Gragson could go there. And a big reason is because he's got the sponsorship funding from Bass Pro Shops. So it would make a ton of sense for him to go over there in 2025. Let's go to the Toyota camp. Let's talk about the 19 car. Martin Truex Jr. has always been the last couple years that Martin Truex Jr. could end up retiring. And many believe that if he ends up retiring, there are 2 names that are really in the running. That is Chandler Smith and, shockingly, Eric Almirola. Chandler Smith is a name I've had penciled in for a long time as a replacement for Mark Truex Jr., but we're not going to know till September. But Chandler Smith would be a really good replacement. He's been doing a really excellent and great job with JGR this year, is sitting second in the points, and is a championship rate threat this season. I think Chandler Smith could be in the running. But Eric Almirola is a seasoned veteran. If they don't feel like Chandler Smith is ready to go, I could see Eric Almirola taking over. Eric has been doing a very, very good job in Xfinity this season, and I think he'd be a championship threat and contender if he got in the 19 car, though he'd have to work with James Small. But I think that Eric Almirola will be a championship threat if he got the chance and the opportunity. But does he want to do that now, considering he got pulled out of the car? I don't know at this particular point, but I think Eric Almirola could be a driver to watch for to get into that 19 car next season. Let's stay in the Toyota camp. Bubba Wallace. He's expected to sign a contract extension with 2311. What's interesting is that this is a contract year for Bubba Wallace, but Bubba Wallace, in my opinion, has been getting better and better as the years have gone on, and he's been having a very solid season. So I think he's going to get a multi-year extension with 2311. He was at the shop today with the reveal of Airspeed. I think that Bubba Wallace will be going back and signing a 2 to 3 year extension with the organization and team. He's been doing a very good job with the organization so far, and Bubba Wallace will sign that extension at the end of the year. We'll stay in the Ford camp and go to Todd Gillen. He's expected to sign a contract extension with Front Row. It's unclear how long the deal is going to be, but many speculate that it's going to be a multi-year deal with Front Row Motorsports and sticking around. We'll stay in Ford. Justin Haley is the last really big bullet point before we talk about some of the other big points. Justin Haley is expected to sign an extension with Rick Ware at the end of the year, but there is a chance he could go to a team like RFK if they expand the 3-car program, considering that Brad has been involved in Justin Haley's development. I think that Justin Haley could be in a running to go to RFK. But going back to the main point of SHR, not a surprise or shock. They're basically a dumpster fire. I think they're going to shut down at the end of the year. I think their Xfinity program is more than likely gone as well at the end of the season, which is very, very disappointing. A lot to go over for sure these next couple weeks. I'm not sure when the announcement is going to happen where all their charters are gone, but I do believe an announcement is coming in the not-so-distant future. So, that is going to today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Well, let's go to below that and comment your thoughts on today's video. You think Noah Gragson ends up at RCR? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about SHR's future? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. Later today on the channel, we're going to have the thank you video for 3,000 subscribers, and we're also going to have the Truck Series race review as well. If any major news breaks throughout the weekend, we'll cover it here. We're going to have a lot of great racing content dropping this weekend, as it is Memorial Day weekend. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.